let's talk about books. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alexis and I love all things books, nature, cozy chats, just talking about life and all the things. This is my first video in 2 years. So I used to have a blog, YouTube channel, the works. I didn't feel genuine in the content that I was putting out, so I never really felt satisfied. And 2 years ago, I just stopped doing it. I just took a really long break to kind of figure out, who I was and what I actually wanted to put out there. And honestly, I really didn't even think about it for the last 2 years until the other day when I was journaling and I was like, I think I want to start YouTube again. So I am back, and even though I haven't been putting out content for the last 2 years, the one thing that I have been doing is reading. So let's just jump right in. So I thought we'd start off with book recommendations for the new reader. And this could be if you used to like reading and it's been a long time since you've read a book, or if you never really liked reading and high school reads were really hard for you and you never got into them. Or I have a lot of mom friends who find it hard to find time for reading. So these are some recommendations that I feel like anyone with limited time or low motivation to read who wants to read can easily pick up and get through the whole book. So I feel like I can't do a book recommendation video without talking about the one person that blew up on social media over the last couple years, and that is Colleen Hoover. Now, I think she's okay. I enjoyed a few of her books, and I read some of her books before she really blew up. But I do think she is a great author for someone who's new to reading or who needs something like super fast paced. There's always unexpected turns in the books. And although I don't love her writing, I think it's really easy to follow. So my favorite 3 from her are Reminders of Him. This broke my heart like most of her books do. But this is just so well written and I love the story. It's about a mom trying to get her daughter back, and she's just going through a lot to fight to get her daughter. So that would be my first recommendation from Colleen Hoover, or Coho, as the kids say these days. Despite all the controversy with this book, I do think this was very well written. This is also a really hard read, and trigger warning for anyone who's been involved in domestic abuse or any type of violence in their relationships. This will be triggering, and I had to physically put this book down at some points because it was so hard to read. But all in all, this is a great book. And then my last Coho recommendation is Verity. This might be one of my favorite books ever. I've also reread all of these books multiple times, so if that tells you anything, I don't know, most of you probably don't know me, but I do reread books that I love. This one I just reread and I forgot how good it was. I was like, oh my gosh. I really like this book because you have POVs from multiple perspectives, 2 main perspectives. And actually the main character, I don't love her POV, but Verity, who the book is about, and that's the name of the book, I love her perspective. So that is really good, and big twist at the end. So you will definitely get through this. All 3 of those books are page turners. You will struggle to put them down. You will probably read them in a day. Okay, so now on to romance, which honestly, I read a little bit of everything. I'm not super picky. Just a few years ago, I wasn't even reading like 5 books a year. So that's why I felt kind of qualified to come on here and do this video to help the new readers get into reading. But the next genre that I'm going to talk about is romance, because I think this is a good genre for new readers. And I have a few faves. So this one I read just a few months ago. This is Book Lovers. A lot of people, I'm sure, have seen this book around. I will say this book, I've been reading romance since the beginning of reading because it's just really easy to follow, I think. But this changed my expectations for a romance novel. It's so complex, it's so sweet, it's cute. It's like everything you love about romance, but has depth to it. So I really love this book. There's also sister relationships, and I have a sister and I love her so, so much. So I just loved this book. So that's Book Lovers. This next novel, I read this about 4 or 5 years ago. And there's 2 books in the series, and then there's a half. So it's like 2.5 books. The last one is a novella, but it's called the Simple Wild series. This book, oh my gosh, I think this was the book that like really got me into reading. It's just so sweet. It is about a girl who lives a very different life than she was born into. So she finds out that her dad is sick, and she goes and visits him, and she only plans to stay for a week, you know, as these things go. She ends up staying for a really long time. There's a love interest. I'm not going to say too much, but it's just my heart. My next romance book recommendation is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I think I said that right, but probably not. I think every woman should read this book. Every person who identifies as a woman should read this book. It's technically romance if you look up the genre, but it's more like self-discovery. There's a lot of parts to it. The theme is like, what would your life look like in 5 years? And the main character has a 5-year plan for herself, and it doesn't turn out like most things do, but she has an opportunity to see her life in 5 years, and the book goes through how it kind of affects how she lives the rest of her 5 years until that time. So that was probably a horrible description, sorry, but it's a great book. Don't take my description for it. And the last book I want to talk about today in this genre is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. I really enjoyed this read. The main character loses her fiance in a car accident or something of that nature. She goes on some medication, I think it's antidepressants or something like that, and she starts having lucid dreams, and in her dreams she's living out her life with her partner. So it's very interesting, a weird kind of take. There's a happy ending, which is nice because, you know, some of the other books I talk about later on in this video don't necessarily have happy endings, but this one does. And, you know, even though she lost the love of her life, she finds a new love. So that was really sweet. All right, so jumping into mystery books, I think this is another good genre to start if you're new to reading or you're needing to get back into them, because most of the books are fast paced and they're quick page turners, and we just want that when we're trying to get back into reading before we go into the super complex stuff. So going into the mystery book recommendations, this is a very beat up book that my friend gave me after she read a long time ago. And I'm just gonna say it, it's in the title. The next recommendation, it's called The Push. And I really like books that have a mother sort of theme. Maybe it's because I'm not a mother yet, and these psychological thrillers that have like weird kid stuff going on doesn't bother me. So if you are a mom, this might bother you. But the main character had always wanted a child, and when she had her child, it was like her child knew from the time of conception that she wasn't a good mother. And I have reread this like 3 times. I read it around October because it's a good little spooky season book. So that would be my next recommendation for mystery. My last 2 recommendations for mystery I don't have with me. I think I checked them out at the library or something like that, are The Maid and The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. These 2 are really popular books. The Maid, the themes are, you know, she's an outcast and she finds a friendship in an unexpected place, and she would do anything to protect her friends. So there's like, you know, some mystery leading up to what happens. I'm not going to say much more, but really good book, easy to follow. And then The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's like a historical fiction, which I don't think is really a genre. I think we kind of made that up, but I love that book. Each section is her different life with the husband, and it doesn't end up how you think it's going to end. Going into the books that I've read this year that are my ultimate favorite books, I've read some really good ones. I don't feel qualified to talk about all of them because, like I said, I just got back into reading a couple years ago, but I don't think that matters. Reading is just about going into a new world and like learning and exploring, so I think it's fine. But we're gonna start off with an SJM book for all of my peeps who are Aquatar fans. I am talking about Sarah J Maas, Crescent City. I read this book. This is a thick boy. Look at this. I think it's over 800 pages, but when I tell you, you will fly through this book. This is not brand new this year, and I haven't read the second one. I just got it in, so I'm super excited to read that. And then the third one comes out, I believe, in January. But this was so good. Low fantasy, humanoid, fantastical mix, and like a world that's kind of like today's, but with fantasy creatures in it. And there's love interest. It's a little steamy, but 10 out of 10 on this book. I loved it, and I need to jump into the second one. I can't wait to get into that. I grabbed my journal because I typically write a little blurb after I read a book that just has left me speechless. And I wrote, "The merge of human and fantastical worlds is genius, simply genius. Bryce Quinlan is sheer badassery. Exciting, erratic, and evocative." So, take my word for it. The next book I want to talk about for top books this year is Remarkably Bright Creatures. This is such a sweet book. Oh my gosh, I'm like thinking about it now. It's about an older lady who's finding a sense of self after losing her son and her husband. It's about finding friendship in unexpected places. There's multiple point of views. There's a little twist at the end, but it's just so sweet, and I love the trope. This is like one of my favorite this year. Behind Crescent City is probably this one. The next top book I have read this year, I want to talk about this book. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite book, but I keep thinking about it. And I think when you just can't get a story out your head, or like you've read something and it just, you keep going back to it. Like I will go back to this book and reread specific chapters. I think it's an impressionable book, and there's a lot of controversy about whether it's good or not. So this is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It was kind of a cozy book for me, but I also like really traumatic books as cozy books. So there's some trauma in here. Trigger warning for anyone who's experienced gun violence. So there's a little bit of that in there, but it's smart. It's about scholars who build video games, and then it just kind of follows them from when they were children to throughout their entire adult life. It has a little bit of repetitiveness, and I've read a few things, a few people agree that it's a little bit repetitive, but it didn't bother me. And I think about this book often, so I need to just go ahead and reread it all the way through, but definitely a top book this year. So next is The Midnight Library. This is the first book I read this year. I finished it on January 3rd. I think I started it like the day before the end of last year, whatever day that is. December 30th, I think it goes to 31st. Either way, I read it in a few days. I really like this book. At the time, I needed something like this. It's a little existential. The main character is not happy with her life, and she gets the opportunity to preview if she would have done different things in her life. But it comes at the expense of attempting suicide. So trigger warning, suicide themes here. But I just really liked the whole premise of the book and how it ended. It was wrapped up, I think, really nicely. All right, and the last book I want to mention that I really enjoyed this year, I could not do this video without mentioning a Jodi Picoult book because I read a lot of Jodi Picoult. And every year I'm like, how do you do it, lady? I mean, this one was co-written, so this is Mad Honey, but last year I really loved Wish You Were Here. And the previous year, I can't even remember what it was, but just, she's killing it. Every year I read a Jodi Picoult book that I love. And I feel like she really has morphed her writing with the times. Like, she changes her writing to be relevant every year. Some people like that, some people don't. I like to escape in books, but I also like to have realistic and relatable books that are relevant to the times. So it's the main character, her son is on trial for a crime that we're not sure if he committed. That's kind of what you explore in the story. And I liked how it's kind of funny. So from the main character, the mom's perspective, it goes in chronological order. For the girl who died, who's murdered, it goes in reverse chronological order. So I thought that was really cool. I like when writers play around with fun stuff like that. And then I really liked how at the end, let's see if I can find it. She has all the recipes, because she's a beekeeper. She has all the recipes that she talked about in here. And so I haven't made any of these recipes, but I love that. I just love, that's so creative, and I'm a creative person, so I had a lot of appreciation for that, Jodi Picoult. So that wraps up my book recommendations for new readers and top reads of 2023. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please comment and let me know. If you didn't, also comment and let me know what I messed up, because I know I screwed up some people's names. You know, I just appreciate you being here if you made it this far at the end. And I don't really know where my YouTube journey is headed. I'm not sure if I'm gonna continue to put out videos. This one felt really close to home, honestly, because it's been a rough couple years, but I've like escaped. I've used books to kind of like get me back to figuring out who Alexis is and what I want to do in this world and what my place is and what kind of things I want to put out there. So I love the bookish community, and I hope that you guys all really enjoyed this video. So if you did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe and chat with me in the comments.